Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kendrick. Hello, everybody. Hope you're having a fantastic day. Have you all been paying attention to some of these injury reports for teams? Even leading in to Week 2, you look at the Cowboys, injuries all over the place. The Jets, it's opt-outs, it's injuries, everything is killing the Jets. The Chargers, they're the Chargers. They seem to lose players every single year to injuries, and it's usually their star players. The Bengals have been hurt. They got hit in their game against the Browns. I mean, it's ridiculous. You go back to even just Week 1. And look at the players that got hurt. The Chargers, they lost a linebacker that they were really depending on. The Cowboys lost Leighton Vander Esch. They lost their starting tight end Jarwin. Injuries have just been everywhere. The Bengals go into the game against the Browns. They're missing 2 of their starting D tackles. They're missing Geno Atkins, they're missing Mike Daniels, and then their tight end goes down with an injury and tore his Achilles. I mean, it's just injuries all over the place. And I don't know if it has anything to do with all the time some of these players didn't really get to spend practicing, warming up, getting more into the groove of things. I know that for guys like Andrew Whitworth, the left tackle of the Rams, at his age, what is he now, like 60? Still playing, he's incredible. For guys like him, for some of these veterans, I don't think they need too much practice to really get into it. They'll even tell you in interviews and everything, when I've listened to him talk, whether it's on the herd or whatever, he'll say that he knows kind of how to get his body ready. He doesn't really need to do all the practicing, he doesn't need preseason. But for some of these other guys, some of the younger guys, maybe they do. I'm honestly not sure. But the injuries have been mounting, especially at wide receiver. So I think that's something to kind of look out for. This season seems like it's going to be the war of attrition. But anyways, we got some stuff to talk about today. The Browns and Bengals. I'm going to talk about some takeaways from that game. The Big Ten has reversed their decision. I'm going to talk about that a little bit. Adam Gase. I think he might get fired by Game 3. After Game 3, depending on their performance, and if their performance goes the way I feel like it's going to go, I think he could be fired. And we're going to talk about some Tampa Bay. But anyways, let's go ahead and let's get into Thursday night's game, the Browns and the Bengals, a really good game. Did anybody see 35-30 happening? I didn't. I thought if anything I'd see a blowout. I thought the Browns would have blown them out of the water. But I gotta say, I like what I'm seeing from the Bengals so far. You know, I feel really, really bad for that whole boycott crowd, the people out there saying that they're not gonna watch football, that they're done with it, it's too political. Man, I feel really bad for you, because Week 1 was great, Week 2's been great, Thursday Night Football, that was great. It was the Browns and the Bengals, and the game ended 35-30. Now, I want to talk about both teams. We're gonna start with the Browns. Baker. That was the best I have seen Baker since probably the first time they played the Ravens last year. Remember last year when they played the Ravens and the Browns were only 1 of 2 teams to actually beat the Ravens? And Baker played one of his best games. He did throw an interception, but he threw over north of 300 yards. I think he had his best QBR that game. I mean, he was sensational. He looked sure of himself. He looked confident. He played with an edge, and he looked like the old Baker. And then for the rest of that year, he didn't really look the same. Week 1 of this season, he did not look the same. And I'm seeing all these articles, I'm listening to all these sports pundits and people in the media talking about Baker, and they're saying what they're seeing is that he doesn't look confident anymore. He doesn't look like himself. I saw one person at Pro Football Focus said his biggest fear for Baker is that he needs to play with a chip on his shoulder. And what ended up happening is he walks on in college, has that chip, proves everybody wrong in college, goes into the NFL, had a good rookie season, and then he lost the fire. Well, if that was true, I think he found his fire at least against the Bengals, because Baker was great. He had that one costly interception where William Jackson made a great play on the ball. He never saw him. I think in any other situation, that would normally be a touchdown, but William Jackson made a great play on the ball. But other than that, Baker finished with a QBR, I think, at like 95, still, even with the interception. He was great. He found Odell Beckham on a deep ball for a touchdown. And then you look at their run game, and I think that this is kind of my big takeaway. When the running game is doing what it did against the Bengals, which is over 200 yards, you run it north of 30 times between Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb, this offense can be scary, because then every single time they play action, you have to believe it. You have to give the run game that kind of respect. And then Baker usually will get, one-on-one coverage with either Beckham or Landry, and that was the thing that was supposed to make this offense so potent. Is because what are you going to stop? If you stack a light box, Chubb and Hunt are going to kill you. And if you go single coverage with Beckham and Landry, they will just beat you over the top. These two receivers are too good to cover one-on-one. Now, obviously, what was it? I think one of the corners against the Bengals, I think Jackson, he did get away with a hold. He literally was pulling Beckham's shirt almost off of his body, and it didn't get called. But nonetheless, I liked what I saw from the Browns, at least on offense. I did not like what I saw from them on defense. The Bengals, and I guess this is when we'll kind of get into the Bengals a little bit here, the Bengals were 5 for 5 on 4th down. Now, granted, most of their 4th downs were all short yardage. It wasn't like 4th and 10 or 4th and 8. It was usually like 4th and 2, 4th and 5. I mean, it was usually short completions. But the thing is that Burrow also threw it every single time, and they converted it. Burrow, he finished that game having thrown 61 times. 61 times, 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks, 5 for 5 on 4th down. He did it with basically no run game. And yet, I'm still not really sure what to make of Joe Burrow. Now, I do think that the Bengals, they gave up on their run game a little bit too early. I thought they needed to give Mixon a few more carries. Mixon is a really, really good running back. And granted, the Cleveland defensive line is one of the best in the league. I know they've been dealing with some injuries with Olivier Vernon and everything, but it's one of the best in the league. Myles Garrett in that game showed everybody why he is the $20 million man. Why he got a $100 million contract. He showed everybody why he's that guy. I know he didn't play that great week 1, but he played much, much better week 2. But I'm not sure what to make of Burrow. And here's kind of why. So I look at against the Browns. You saw what the Ravens did. The Ravens dropped 30. That's kind of expected. Because the Ravens, they did that all last year. And they're returning all their players. So it's kind of expected that the Ravens will be able to do that to the Browns. But the Bengals almost did the exact same thing. They dropped 30 themselves. And they did it with significantly less talent. I think the only unit that anybody might actually take on the Bengals over the Ravens is the wide receiver core. Because Tyler Boyd and AJ Green are both studs. And when it comes to the Ravens, outside of Hollywood Brown, it's kind of a bunch of guys. They just kind of mix and match pieces. They don't really have a true number one receiver. AJ Green, once upon a time, was regarded as one of the best receivers in the league. The Ravens do not have that. And I don't remember the last time that they even did have that. But they still managed to drop over 30 points. And I think that that's more of an indictment on Cleveland's defense, more so than just a good Bengals offense. And here's kind of my reasoning for that. When you look at the Browns' defense, outside of their defensive line, what other unit on their team is elite? They lost Joe Schobert. He's now in Jacksonville, so their linebacking core took a huge hit because he's a really, really good player. I like Mac Wilson, but he's hurt right now and he's not playing. I like Denzel Ward a lot. I think he's one of the best young corners in the league. He's only one guy. And Greedy Williams, at the moment, his bookend on the other side isn't playing. Their safeties aren't that great. They're just kind of safeties. So I don't really know whether or not to give him that kind of credit. I don't know whether or not to say it's just the Browns defense that isn't good and they're just dealing with some injuries. They need some of these players to get back healthy. I don't know what to really make of that. And then there was the game against the Chargers, and that was the really, really big test. I came out here and I said that was one of the games I was looking really forward to seeing week 1, because I thought with that Chargers defense and what their offense could be, they would give Burrow and the Bengals a real tough challenge. Outside of it just being his first game and his first live action, and all the eyes would be on him because he is the number 1 overall pick and everybody wants to see what his first game looks like, I thought it'd be a really good challenge. And then did you see the Chargers offense out there? Did you see how pitiful they looked? Another takeaway I had from that Browns game was the Chargers offense is in serious trouble. They are in serious trouble. If that is what they did to the Bengals defense while the Browns dropped over 30, that does not bode well for them. The Chargers offense, what was the game? It was like 15-6 heading into the fourth quarter. I mean, it was disgusting. It was a terrible game. And the Chargers defense had to spend so much time on the field. The Burrow in the offense, they just kind of dinked and dunked their way up the field. And while they gave up the 1 touchdown on the ground, other than that, they held them to all field goals. But I thought that was more of an indictment on the Chargers offense, in that their defense just got tired as heck, needing to go out there repeatedly to bail them out. Because Taylor couldn't move the football, the offensive line wasn't really protecting him that great, Taylor was inaccurate. The play calling, to me, again, like I've said, it just didn't make any sense. I thought they should have ran him more, but they seemed to play him like he was Phillip Rivers and had him just keep dropping back. He had like 30 plus attempts against the defense. It was just not a great test in my mind, because there's only so long that a defense can be on the field before they get tired and teams just start getting chunk plays. There's only so long that teams can run around on the field before there's just always going to be somebody open. And if the quarterback can just keep hitting them, if the running back can just keep finding the hole, they'll just keep moving the ball. And granted, after the touchdown run from Burrow, they didn't let them get back in the end zone, but their offense was not really helping them out. I will tell you what the real test is going to be. Here's what I think the real test is going to be. I think the real test is going to come up against the Ravens in week 5. That is when I think the real test is going to be. Because that is an elite offense. It's an elite defense. And I think that is going to be, like, that's when we're going to say, all right, Burrow, what do you got? What do you got? That this is the reigning MVP. Let's see what you can do. Now, their next game is against the Eagles. I think when it comes to that game, I think it'll be good. I don't really like the Eagles defense too much. Again, outside of their pass rush, I think it's kind of the same situation with Cleveland. They go and they take on the Colts next. And I like the Colts offense a lot more. I know that they're going to be able to move the football. When it comes to their defense, I like, again, their defensive line. Their linebacking core, pretty good. Maybe the weakest point of their defense is the secondary. So you could probably say that will be their first real test, will be the Colts. Phillip Rivers with T.Y. Hilton, Jack Doyle, their running back stable with Jonathan Taylor and Himes now that Mack is out. Their offensive line, best in the league. Their defense, great pass rush, great linebackers. A weaker secondary, but still pretty good. Maybe average, middle of the pack, middle of the road with all the NFL teams. But I think the real big test, when we're going to get to see what Burrow is made out of, is week 5 against the Ravens. Okay, so I've been kind of ripping Burrow here. I've been kind of discrediting him. I know, I'm not trying to. I'm really not. I'm just trying to put everything into context. But let me go ahead and talk nice about Burrow here for a second. Joe Burrow, through 2 weeks, looks like the real deal. He really does. And I'm starting to question Miami because I think Tua can play. I do. I really do think Tua will be good. I think he'll be able to play in the NFL. But I really want to see Tua. And remember, there were some of the reports coming out talking about how the Dolphins, they might be trying to trade up. They might really, really want to grab Joe Burrow. They're having second thoughts about Tua. They might want to grab Burrow. Oh no, wait, they want to go Herbert. I never believed they were going to go for Herbert, but Joe Burrow, I thought there might be a real chance they might try and trade up with Miami. Or not Miami. They might try and trade up with the Bengals and get that pick from them. If Burrow looks like this, I'm just saying, when Tua does start his first NFL game, he's going to have some high expectations. I just believe that. He's going to have some expectations. We are instantly going to judge him compared to Burrow. And when it comes to both situations, which situation is better? You would probably say that Burrow has a better supporting cast when it comes to his receivers and his his running back situation. You'd probably say Burrow's in a better situation. So maybe Tua gets a bit of a pass because the receivers were opting out and they jettisoned a bunch of their players. They traded away Laramie Tunsil. They didn't re-sign Jawan James. But I think Burrow looks good. Burrow looks like the number one pick. When the Bengals when any team tells you to throw the football 60 plus times, they're saying they trust you. When you're going for it early in the game on the fourth down with your raw rookie quarterback, you're telling me, you're telling him, you're telling everybody, you have faith in this kid to get the job done. They have put the ball in his hands and they have told him, save us. Please, save us. We are dying here. We need points on the board. We are struggling. Save us. And Burrow, so far, has been doing it. By hook or by crook. Despite whatever situation is that surrounds the Chargers or that surrounds the Browns, he has almost won both games. He has come close to winning both games. Against the Chargers, a missed field goal that took away an opportunity to go against the Chargers in overtime. After their early field goal against Cleveland, they never led again. And although they did close the gap, 35-30, realistically, you had a chance. They did have some other drives in there. One ended in a fumble. There was some really, really bad play calling by Zach Taylor that I did not understand at one point. There was a drive for them. At one point, they were at the Cleveland 9. Or at the Cleveland 8. I think they ran like 5. What'd they do? They ran a few plays. And they ended at the Cleveland 9. It was just terrible. There was very, very questionable play calling. But Burrow, 60 plus throws, completed over 30 of them, 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. He looks good. LeBron James acknowledged it on Twitter. Baker Mayfield after the game acknowledged it and said Burrow looks like the real deal. When you look at the AFC North this year, Lamar, Baker, Burrow, Ben, eventually he is going to retire. But this division, I think, is in really good hands. When it comes to Lamar, he's going to be around for a while. With what I've seen from Burrow so far, it looks like he'll be around for a while. I think the question mark is around Baker. And will he be on this team? We're going to need to see more performances like his one against the Bengals. And I understand, the Bengals defense isn't anything to, geek over either. I'm not trying to say that Baker Mayfield, he's back, Baker's back. But just, you compare that performance to what he did against the Ravens, and compared to what he did all last year, except for a few different games. Holy God, did he look better. He looked so much better. Outside of the one interception, again, outside of that one pick, and it was a bad pick, he was great. Baker was money the whole day. He ran when he needed to. He played his game. He looked confident. He didn't second guess his throws. He looked good. And when it comes to Burrow, he looks like the number 1 overall pick. What he's doing right now with Cincinnati, with no preseason, no rookie training camp, no scrimmages, no nothing. What he is doing right now is incredible. And for him to throw it 61 times, you never want your quarterback to throw it 61 times, especially as a raw rookie. But for them to trust him to throw it 61 times is incredible. We have seen teams with leads in games take the ball out of their quarterback's hands because they don't trust him. Blake Bortles against the Patriots. You have a lead in the AFC Championship game, they took the ball out of his hands. In the playoffs last year with the 49ers, Kyle Shanahan took the ball out of Jimmy Garoppolo's hands. Pete Carroll, mainly because he's just too stubborn and likes the running game, in some of these games, he takes the ball out of Russell Wilson's hands, even though he never should. Burrow looked good. Plain and simple. He looks like the real deal. I think Cincinnati fans should be ecstatic because I think they have their future quarterback. Now, the biggest thing for the Bengals is they need to protect him at all costs because through 2 games, he has been beat to hell. The Browns, outside of sacking him, knocked him to the ground 9 or 10 times. The Chargers game, they sacked him repeatedly. In the Cleveland game, they sacked and hit him repeatedly. You need to protect this kid because their offensive line isn't doing a great job of it. They're really not. And the last thing that you want to have happen is for Burrow to get hit so much that he becomes gun shy, that he stops letting it go, that his reaction, that he starts leaving the pocket too early because he doesn't trust his protection. The last thing you want is to ruin his confidence in himself and in his teammates. Now, Burrow, he's been a champion, talked about it, said, he hates losing. This is the first time he's ever lost 2 games in a row. He hates it. Look, he's got the competitiveness. I said I think he has the maturity to handle the NFL and handle Cincinnati's dysfunction, their historic dysfunction. But even the best of players, if early in their careers they don't get the proper protection, they don't get the proper surroundings, not everyone is Andrew Luck, who can take a beating for years and years and years and stomach it and survive in it. But we all saw what happened to Andrew Luck. He retired at 29. I'm just saying, Cincinnati needs to protect Joe Burrow. I think he's good. They need to invest all of their future picks into the offensive line and protecting him. I don't know about any big free agents that are supposed to be coming up here soon or anything like that. I don't think there's just all of a sudden going to be some big left tackle or big guard or center that comes available in free agency soon. But they need to protect him as soon as possible. Anyways, coming up next, the Big Ten reversed their decision to play college football. We're going to talk about that.
Listen up, sports bettors. This is Bryson Ethan here to tell you about our favorite sports book, and that's BetUS. Football, basketball, and baseball are all back, and that means it's time to get down your bets. We only endorse one sports book, and that is BetUS.com. Why, you ask? BetUS is the pioneer in online betting with more than 25 years in the biz. You need a sports book with integrity and longevity, and you need to know that you're going to get paid.
That's right, Bryce. You need a sports book that offers everything, including live betting, MMA, golf, horses, esports, entertainment, and all kinds of crazy prop bets and futures. So call today at 1-800-MY-BET-US. That's 1-800-MY-BET-US, and they will walk you through getting started. Nobody in the industry gives better bonuses or bigger bonuses than BetUS. Join now, mention GSMC, and you get up to 150% in bonuses on your first deposit. Nobody beats that. We bet at BetUS, and so should you. So join BetUS today. That's BetUS.com or call 1-800-MY-BET-US, mention GSMC, and get 150% in bonuses on your first deposit.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow
follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. Last segment talked about the Browns and the Bengals, some Burrow, some Baker. All in all, I liked the game by both quarterbacks. I did not expect it to be so high scoring. When it comes to Baker, that is the Baker I remember from his rookie year. He looked sure of himself. He let the ball rip. He wasn't a turnover machine. Yes, he had the one interception, but it was a great play by William Jackson. I think on any other play, that would normally be a touchdown. All in all, I like the game from Baker. I know it is the Bengals defense, but it was still way, way better. I mean, we remember Baker the majority of last year, and against the Ravens, he was not great. People were counting him out. People were calling for Case Keenum. Came back, had one of the best games of his career, especially from a QBR standpoint. And as for Joe Burrow, I'm just having a real hard time figuring out what to make of Joe Burrow. I like Burrow so far by the eye test. I think he's got it by the eye test. I think he's a dude who can really play in this league, and I think the Bengals have a keeper. I just think they need to protect him better. They need, or, maybe even, I don't know, just, keep an extra tight end blocking. I don't know, change the way that you are calling plays, get him more rolling out, get him away from pressure, maybe save him from himself, tell him to not always take the big hit. I don't know, he's a competitive kid though, and so far he looks good through 2 weeks. But anyways, let's get into some college football. So, obviously, 2020, I have said it. I feel like I say this every single podcast at this point. 2020 almost killed sports. And for a while, it seemed like if there was any league that was going to be hit the hardest, it would be college. And the reason why college would be hit is because, at least unlike the NFL and the NBA and MLB and all the other big sports leagues, in college, the players don't get paid. They are not employees. They are student athletes. And so there's a liability thing that the colleges would kind of be held to with them, and the thought was most of these colleges are not going to want to deal with it. And so what ended up happening? Division III's canceled, Division II's canceled, and then it kind of came down to Division I. And the thought was, are there going to be some of these divisions that do opt out? And then kind of one by one, certain divisions, certain schools were saying they didn't want to play, that they just weren't going to risk it. There weren't going to be kids on their campus, they weren't going to have sports, they just didn't think it was safe. And there were those in America that thought it was a good idea, and then there were those who thought it was a sham, and then there were those who just kind of sat back and they said, hey guys, can we just postpone things? Why are schools coming out and saying they are canceling the season? Why aren't schools just coming out and saying they're going to postpone? And then the thought, really, what people started thinking about were the really, really big conferences. The Big Ten, the Pac-12, these bigger conferences, the SEC, what is going to happen with them? Now, some of the points I heard that were shared amongst the masses was that the SEC is surely going to play, that the Pac-12 was probably going to opt out, and that the Big Ten might follow the Pac-12 and they might decide to opt out. And sure enough, what ended up happening, the Big Ten opted out. The Big Ten said they were not going to play, and instantly people started talking about all the teams that meant weren't going to play. The Ohio State would not end up playing. Michigan State, Nebraska, a lot of schools that produce a lot of NFL talent, and I think the big thing for Ohio State was not only are they returning Justin Fields, who is presumed to be the second best quarterback in this upcoming NFL draft, right behind the presumptive number 1 overall pick, Trevor Lawrence, but with all the players that they had returning, compared to some other teams, they were a team that had a real shot to win the title this year. And they looked at their own state and they said, hello. The Bengals are going to play. The Browns are going to play. We have friggin' high school teams. Why can't we play? Why is it that we cannot play? If anything, we are the team in Ohio. It's not the Browns. It's not, it's not the Bengals. It's us. We are the thing. We are the draw. And I completely understood that, and I think they're right. But I also understood it from the schools and from the conference's perspective, because at the time, people didn't know too much about COVID. All they did know was every single day, thousands of people were getting infected with it. Every single day, numerous people were dying because of it. And then they just looked at some of the long-term health effects that people were suffering from. Organ damage, breathing problems, their immune systems were just getting shot. I mean, it was ridiculous. And so what I always came out here and I said was, look, either way they want to go for it, I'm game. However, I do think now is not the time to cancel things. I think it's the time to just sit back and wait. We don't need to cancel anything. What we just need to do is postpone things. And then obviously there's the other crowd of people who just say, if the kids want to play, let them play. And I mean, I understand that. And I actually agreed with some of the college players that came out and said they believed that the safest place for them would be on the campus in the football environment, because if they're in their housing on campus and if they have, they don't have the ability to just be around anybody, it's basically be around your team, there'd be testing, you would make sure you're safe and that you're clean, as compared to being home where anybody can walk in and out, you can leave willy-nilly and go anywhere and possibly get it. I understood that and I agreed with it, that the safest place for some of these guys was probably going to be on the campus. But I talked about a player at LSU who came down with the coronavirus, and he talked about how he had lost, during his time of having it, he lost like 30 odd pounds because he couldn't eat anything. And he just had zero energy, and it was literally zapping him. I even think there's a player, I saw a report maybe about a week ago or so, I think there's a quarterback at one of the schools who's dealing with heart issues. He had COVID, and now he's dealing with some heart issues he didn't have before because of it. So even then, there's still some concerns around this. But the Big Ten came out, and the Pac-12 came out, and they said they were going to cancel their seasons. And a big thing with the Big Ten, especially, is that they are the oldest Division I conference in college football. So part of this, I think, might have been they wanted to start the trend, right? If the Big Ten does it, well, what are these other conferences to keep their seasons going? If the Big Ten does this, are they on the right side of history or are they on the wrong side of history? Well, as time has gone on since they canceled the season and the players have voiced their opinions about it and the coaches have voiced their opinions about it, obviously we see in the NBA, things have worked out fine. The circumstances are different, but nonetheless, it's worked out fine. In the MLB, have they had some bloopers here and there? Yes, but all in all, things seem fine, and when the playoffs come around, they're going to go to a bubble format. And then, of course, the NFL has started. They've gone on so far fine. There was the scare at the Kansas City game. Apparently, there was a fan that got in who had COVID. I thought they were testing you for it when you came into the arena, so I don't know if the testing is faulty or what that was about. But nonetheless, I think I read a report that said there were maybe 2 NFL players that came down with it, nobody else. So all in all, it seems as though these leagues, these teams, these organizations have kind of gotten a grasp on it. And there have been college football games getting played. And I haven't seen any reports or anything talking about mass COVID testing numbers, like mass COVID cases since the start of the season. So the Big Ten probably looked around and took the temperature of the room, saw that things were a bit better than they expected it to be, and they decided to go ahead and opt back in and actually have a season. I don't remember exactly when their season's supposed to start, but I think they're going to open against Nebraska. I might have it wrong, but I think they're going to open up against Nebraska. And I just got to say, I think I think that they're doing the right thing. I do think they're doing the right thing because even I had my concerns when it came to the NFL. I was saying at the very beginning of doing these podcasts, I was saying if you looked at the NFL schedule and you looked at when you take in all the games that are played and the amount of people involved in every single game, there were gonna be meetings of basically over 100,000 people through a 16-game regular season schedule through the 17 weeks. And I looked at it and I said to myself, how on earth do you plan to control COVID during that? 100,000 people? And it's not like there's going to be a bubble. People are going to go out. People are going to go to the store. They're going to go to restaurants. They're going to be doing these things. I said, you're going to have to put a lot of faith in individuals to not mess up. Even in the NBA bubble, Daniel House, who was a player for the Rockets, he was removed from the bubble. And because he snuck a woman into his room. And this is the NBA bubble that we're talking about, where you're not allowed to leave, and people are regulated coming in. And somehow he got a woman in, then he was removed, and I'm sure he's probably going to get traded from the Rockets, or something's going to happen, because I don't know if they're going to be able to trust him again. And that's kind of the thing with the NFL, is you're just going to have to trust your team. You're going to have to trust your teammates, trust your brothers, to not mess up, to not put you in jeopardy. Obviously, there was that Seahawks rookie cornerback who tried to do the same thing with a girl, tried to sneak her into the Seahawks team hotel and put her in a football uniform. It didn't work. But the rookie tried to do that. He issued a statement on Twitter saying that he was sorry and that he did something that was unacceptable, whether it's during COVID or not during COVID. So some of the players will be mature enough to handle it, some aren't. And when it came to college, I think that was a big concern, is that these kids are 18, 19, 20, 21 years old. And you're asking them to be responsible enough to wear a mask at all times, to wash your hands at all times, to not go out in big groups of people. And sure enough, I've seen more than enough videos of younger people online, not necessarily athletes, but just younger people in general, going out to pools with big groups of people, throwing parties. There are COVID parties now, which are ridiculous. It's just... it's a calculated risk. What you have to do in this kind of situation, you have to take a calculated risk. And I think that's what the Big Ten is doing. And as for the Pac-12, I think they would be next. I know they're supposed to make a decision soon. I think they said their deadline was going to be like this next Thursday, maybe, is when they're supposed to have a decision. I could have that wrong. Maybe I misread, but from what I saw, it said that they were supposed to have a decision most likely next Thursday or so, and that the season, if they decided to have it, the season would start before January 1st, so they would try and have it start, maybe, I don't know what, maybe like beginning of December or something like that. Because obviously the concern is, if you start it too late, the NFL draft is soon, guys are supposed to start preparing for the NFL draft. How are you going to fit in a season? How many games are you going to play? How's it going to look? It's probably going to look really, really ugly. And just some teams are going to play 10 games. Some teams play 8 games. Where's the fairness in that? This is just a really crazy year. This is a crazy year, and nothing is normal. This is... And I don't know if you would say this is probably the hardest year for sports ever. When it comes to these athletes with truncated seasons and truncated mini camps, we still know there is still a possibility that the NFL might at some point in time have to cancel a game. That could still end up happening. There could be a legitimate chance that one day the NFL has to cancel a game because there's just so many COVID outbreaks. Like, who knows? I mean, we're in week 2. We still have until like week 17 for the regular season. I mean, we still got 15 more weeks of football. You never quite know what can happen. Cross your fingers, knock on wood that nothing does happen, and that the season is able to continue uninterrupted. But I think the Big Ten. I think the biggest thing is sometimes businesses try so hard to get things right. And they try so hard to be looked at in a positive light to public opinion, that they end up making the wrong decision. And I have always held firm that to cancel a season, though I understand why they would want to do it, why they would lean that way, I think that was an overreaction. To cancel it, to flat out cancel it, I thought was wrong. The wrong word to use. What you should say is you're going to postpone it. And then you're just going to wait and you're going to see what happens. And we had more testing. The tests are getting better. Obviously, there are better tests than some. There's cheap tests, which seems to be the one that it seems like these colleges want to use. They want to use the cheaper testing. The problem with the cheaper testing is that if it does test positive, you then need to use the more expensive testing. There's actual names for it. I just don't know the names off the top of my head. But there's cheap ones and more expensive ones. The more expensive ones are the ones that actually let you know if you have it. The other ones are just kind of an indication. They are accurate. Apparently, if you don't have it, they're accurate. But if you do, that's when you need to make sure you kind of confirm it. So we'll see what happens. Are these colleges going to be cheap about it? Or are they actually going to want to make sure that the students are healthy? We'll figure that out when it comes to what tests they're actually going to use. But all in all, I think the Big Ten is doing the right thing. And I guess you just kind of hope that the Pac-12 does follow. Just follow the safety protocols. Test their kids. Keep them safe. And then obviously it falls on the players themselves to make sure that they act like an adult even at their younger age. Be mature about the situation. You can't just go out to the club. I don't even know how many of them will really be old enough to even go to the club, but you can't go to it. You can't just go out anywhere. You can't just go to a party. You gotta be smart about this. You gotta protect your teammates. You gotta protect yourself. You gotta protect the people who you're gonna come in contact with. So I guess we will wait and see what happens with the Pac-12. We'll wait and see what happens as the season goes on. But if they can take away anything from the MLB and anything from basketball, following the protocols works. It does work. Thank goodness our sports leagues handled COVID better than America did as a whole. Anyways, coming up next, we're going to talk about some Sam Darnold and the Jets and some Adam Gase. I think Adam Gase could get fired after their third game. And stay tuned, final topic of the day, we're going to talk about some Tampa Bay drama that has been circulating in the news over the last week or so. We're going to get into that coming up at the end of the show.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. Last segment talked about the Big Ten reversing their decision and actually going through with playing a season this year. Again, I think it's the right decision. I understood what the Big Ten was trying to do. They were trying to be cautious. They saw what was happening all across America. They didn't want it to happen to the kids on campus. They didn't want it to happen to the staff, to the students that are not student athletes, and they just didn't want to go, they didn't want to play a season. I think they were trying to be cautious. I think they were trying to make the right decision. But as time has gone on, we've learned more about this virus. We've learned more about how it is transmitted. There are very, very there are preventative measures to take. And I believe that is what they're going to do. Test the kids. Make sure they don't have it. hold everyone accountable, make sure that nobody's going to parties and no one's going to big gatherings, make sure that people aren't just leaving campus willy-nilly. I do agree with some of the athletes, the safest place for them probably is the campus. Nonetheless, I applaud the Big Ten. I think the Pac-12 is going to follow suit. And, but let's go ahead and let's get into this. Did you guys see the Jets against the 49ers? Another embarrassing performance by Sam Darnold, by the Jets roster, and by Adam Gase. Do people realize that the 49ers went in that game without George Kittle, and without Richard Sherman, and without Deebo Samuels, who, even though he was just a second-year wide receiver, was a big part of their offense this last year, and they only wanted him to do more coming into this season? He is still out with an injury. Do people realize that during this game, the 49ers lost Raheem Mostert, they lost Jimmy Garoppolo, they lost Solomon Thomas, and they lost Nick Bosa, who was the best rookie edge defender since who? Since his brother Joey? Since Aldon Smith? They lost him for the season with a torn ACL. And the Jets still only dropped 13 points. On the very first play of the game, Raheem Mostert, 80 yards to the house. The Jets look terrible. They look like the worst team in the NFL. And it isn't even close. I really don't. I don't think it's even close. Who has looked this bad? Against the Bills, they didn't even look competitive until late into the second half of the game. The Bills were blowing them out, and I still consider it a blowout. The Jets didn't even look competitive. After week 1, Sam Darnold had the lowest Pro Football Focus grade of any quarterback. I think his grade was in the 20s or 30s. It was awful. Sam Darnold has not gotten any better. That is something I've realized. He's not getting better. He's getting worse. And the team around him is getting worse. They have wasted this window with this kid. Every single team over these last few years that drafts a quarterback really, really high, what they try to do is they try to maximize the window. So what they do is they take all the money that they should have and they try to surround them with pieces to go and win a championship. The Cowboys did it. The Eagles did it. The Rams did it. The Browns are trying to do it. The Bills right now are trying to do it. The Ravens did it. The Chiefs did it. The Texans did it. You know who isn't doing it? The Jets. Now, I mean, they've tried a little bit, I mean, they did sign C.J. Mosley to a contract. They did bring him in. Oh, they did go and sign Le'Veon Bell. They've tried. This has been terrible. What is the purpose of keeping Adam Gase on this team? What is the purpose? Adam Gase is probably the worst head coach in the NFL. I know a lot of people say it's Bill O'Brien. It might very well be a toss-up between he and Adam Gase. Why did Adam Gase even get this job? I remember when he got the Miami job, a lot of people looked at Adam Gase and they said, oh, he's this young, hot shot play caller, right? He's like a Sean McVay. I think the Jets have found their Sean McVay. Sean McVay has been one of the best and the worst things to happen to the NFL. He's been one of the best things to happen to the NFL because the game is so offensively driven and the play calling has gotten so creative, it just makes for really, really fun games. It makes for really, really fun matchups. The bad thing about it is that now you have all these teams trying to find their Adam Gase, their Andy Reid, their Kyle Shanahan, whoever it might be, when the truth of the matter is, there's only one Sean McVay. There's only one Andy Reid. There's only one of these guys. You need to find your own dude. Stop signing every single guy that has a cup of coffee with Sean McVay. Stop signing every single guy who spends a season with Bill Belichick. Just because you're around somebody else who's great does not mean you yourself are going to be great. And I get it, what Adam Gase, he had a few good offenses. He had an offense once upon a time with Peyton Manning that looked really good. and so what? Did that warrant Adam Gase's pub? Because when he became a head coach with the Dolphins, his first year, they went to the playoffs. His second year, third year, they did nothing. They moved on from him. He's now with the Jets. First year with the Jets, what were they, 7-9? Nothing really. And now we're in year 2, and they are the worst team in the NFL by far, in my opinion. Every single team looks like they could blow out the Jets. They're awful. And I honestly think, God, it's gotta be what, week 2? What? Week 3? Week 4? Week 5? Week 6? What week do you want to fire Adam Gase? They're gonna go against the Colts next. The Colts are gonna win that game. And I think they're gonna win huge. Their defense, did you see what they did to Kirk Cousins? Kirk Cousins, his game against the Packers, a lot of people maligned Kirk Cousins. He performed really well. Look at his Pro Football Focus grade. And then look what they did to him. Look what the Colts did to him in week 2. I think the Colts are going to blow out the Jets. You look at the Broncos. I think Drew Lock should be back for that game. But even if he isn't, I think the Broncos are going to win that game. They might not blow them out, but I think they'll win. The Cardinals, they're going to blow them out. The Chargers, I think they're going to blow them out. The Bills, I think they will dominate them again. What week do you want to fire Adam Gase? It's my question. Because Sam Darnold isn't getting better. You look at his grades per year, he's only gotten worse. The team around him has only gotten worse. You have yet to get him a solid offensive line or even a decent one. You haven't given him a run game. You haven't given him a number 1 receiver. The best receiver you've given him is Jamison Crowder, who's a slot dude. You let Robbie Anderson walk. Your tight ends, Chris Herndon seems pretty good. He is a no-show in most of their offensive game plans. For whatever reason, they decide to not really feature their tight end when it seems like that's exactly what they should do. The Jets are a mess. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. The Jets are a mess, and I believe, in my opinion, after this next week, after their game against the Colts next Sunday, when they get blown out by the Colts, if I am the Jets front office, I am firing Adam Gase because the team doesn't look like it's trying. I forgot what player it was. A player from the Jets came out after the game against the Niners and said, "We're not doing anything different. It's just rinse and repeat." Every single week, they go out there with a vanilla game plan, with a bad roster. I mean, plain and simple, they just have an untalented roster, and then they get their clocks cleaned by everybody that they face. You had all these people talking about how, Jacksonville is going to be the worst team. Miami's probably going to be the worst team. I have said since day one, do people notice what's on the Jets? Do people look at their offense and see what it is? It's Sam Darnold and Jamison Crowder. And Le'Veon Bell if he has anything left. But that's it. There's nothing else. There's nothing else to look forward to. If I'm the Jets, I'm going to fire Adam Gase and I'm going to try and just simply save Sam Darnold. The season's over. The season was over before it started for the Jets. If the Jets came into the season thinking they had a shot to win the Super Bowl, then you need to literally clean house on the entire organization. And they still might need to do that because they've been bad for years. But if I'm them, I'm firing Adam Gase and I'm going to try and save Sam Darnold. I keep seeing all these reports and I keep hearing these things about how the Jets, they really like Sam Darnold. They really like the kid. They think he's talented. They don't want to give up on him. He has said everything right. He's still young. He's only going into his 4th year. All of those things are true. And let me be very, very fair to Sam Darnold. I've done this for Baker. I've said this about Rosen. I've said this about any young quarterback in a bad situation. I'm going to say this for Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold has been in a terrible situation. You look at the quarterbacks from that draft, and look at where all of them went, and look at who's having the success. Lamar Jackson goes to Baltimore. Great organization. They surrounded him with pieces. He won the MVP. Josh Allen goes to Buffalo. Not necessarily one. I mean, they're not like an outstanding organization. They have a great fan base, but they're not like some outstanding organization. They were in a rebuild mode. They were trying to find their new head coach and find the future of their team. And he has come into a great coaching staff that have done everything in their power to surround him with pieces, and look at what Josh Allen is doing this season. He came into this season having never thrown for 300 yards in a game. He has now thrown 300 and 400 in back-to-back games to start the season. Josh Allen looks like the most improved player in the league, given what we've seen so far. And then you look at the other guys. Josh Rosen, he's on the practice squad in Tampa Bay, and it's his third team. Baker Mayfield, he's on his fourth head coach in Cleveland, and they're trying to figure out whether or not Baker's even the guy. There's rumors he could get benched if he has a really, really bad performance. He could get benched for Case Keenum because this regime didn't draft him. And then you look at Sam Darnold with the Jets. A lot of people, they kind of hung their hat on the Fitzpatrick year, and they looked at the team as maybe it's ticking up in the right direction. But I mean, look at what they've done. They draft Geno Smith, doesn't work out. They bring in Ryan Fitzpatrick for a year, it works. Next year, it falls apart. They drafted Bryce Petty, I think was the guy's name. Dude wasn't even close to being an NFL quarterback. Now they have Sam Darnold, and he has yet to make it through a full season. The offensive line's gotten worse. The receiving core has gotten worse. They can't keep any of the players that they draft. I mean, it's like what's happening in Jacksonville, except you look at Jacksonville. Do you see the fight this team has? Jacksonville, realistically, I mean, they probably should have lost to Tennessee a lot earlier with the way they were playing, but they came back, and they tied it 30-30. And then Steven Gostkowski, who in the week number 1 couldn't even buy a field goal, kicks the game winner, and ultimately the Jags ended up losing. But the Jags, I'm telling you, they're going to be like a middle-of-the-road team. I think they'll be one of the 10 worst teams. But I think that they're going to be a team that can really upset some people. The Jets, if any team loses to the Jets, you did something wrong. You need to, whatever the game plan was, you need to never use it again. If any team loses to the Jets this year, the whole game plan needs to be thrown away and burned and needs to never be discussed again, because I don't think any team should lose to the Jets this year. If I am the Jets, I'm looking at this upcoming NFL draft. I'm going to have a top 5 pick. I'm probably going to have a top 2 pick, and it's not going to be number 2. And I have a decision to make. If I really, really like Sam Darnold, which again, by all accounts, the Jets do, fire Adam Gase, use that pick, draft an offensive lineman. Mekhi Becton looks like he's a player. He really does. He looks like he's going to be a really good player. So you got one offensive lineman. Now you draft another, or you draft him a receiver. I know taking a receiver number 1 overall is probably crazy. Maybe they can trade down, get like the 10th pick in like another draft pick. I don't know. I'm just shooting out hypotheticals here. But draft somebody that he can really use, probably an offensive lineman, a left tackle. I know that they signed George Fant, but as somebody who watched Fant play in Seattle for 3-4 years, it was a terrible deal. I don't know why they gave him that money. He is not that good, but whatever. They panicked and they gave it to him. Happy for Fant. Get paid, dude. Jets, terrible decision. And I look at the Jets and I look at their front office and I just think they need to decide, are they going to try and actually build around Sam Darnold, or do they completely start over? Because again, every single team, especially recently, when they draft a rookie quarterback and they draft them high, what they try to do is they try to build around them, and they try to win a title as quick as possible. Look at the Eagles, look at the Cowboys, look at the Rams, the Chiefs, the Texans, the Ravens, the Bills, the Browns. They're trying. It hasn't worked so far, but they're trying their hardest. And then there's the Jets, who can't keep any of their top players. They just trade them away, or they let them walk in free agency, and they say, Sam Darnold, can you please save us? Can you save us, please? And he can't do it. God, if I was like Sam Darnold at this point, I'm demanding a trade. I'm saying, get me the hell out of here. Trade me somewhere else. And that's why I think there's always that fear when you are a quarterback coming into the draft. There's a lot of these guys who talk about how they want to go number 1 overall. A lot of guys always say, I want to be the number 1 pick. I want to go number 1. Do you? I know you get more money. I know you get a lot more money up front, but do you really? Because you know what going number 1 means, right? It means you're going to a bad team. Very rarely is the team that's drafting number 1 or number 2 or in the top 5. Very rarely is that a good team. The only time it's a good team, it's usually because they had like a quarterback injury or the team just got riddled with injuries and so the season fell apart. Other than that, you're going to Miami or the Browns or to the Jets or to Washington. You're going to one of these historically bad franchises. And when it comes to a team like the Jets, who again, like I said, I predict they're going to draft number 1 overall. When you have a team like the Jets, the last quarterback to have real success with the team was probably, Mark Sanchez? And even then, that was a defensive-driven team. Since then, it's been Geno Smith, it's been, Ryan Fitzpatrick coming in, who was originally supposed to be a backup, but then became the starter. It's been Bryce Petty. It's just been guys. Most of them aren't even like NFL quality, aren't even NFL level quarterbacks. And then there's Sam Darnold, who's just been thrown into the fire and is getting killed every single week by these pass rushes. He's getting driven into the ground. It's just a mess. It really is a mess. And also on another note, that turf in that stadium, it needs to be fixed. That turf was terrible. And I saw some of the Niners players were clearly blaming the turf as to the injuries that they ended up suffering. And the Niners that game, they had a lot of injuries, and they all had to deal with the legs. So I think there's an issue with that turf there. They got to discuss that. But yeah, when it comes to the Jets, my call to the Jets, guys, fire Adam Gase as soon as possible. You're gonna get blown out by the Colts. Now, Phillip Rivers, he might throw you a pick or two. He might try and keep you into the game. But do not let that distract you from the fact that your team is literally the worst in the league. Do not let it distract you from that. Adam Gase, all he cares about is from the things I've heard from the inside reporting, is all he cares about is the fact that he's rich, the fact that he's famous, he has the money, he's a head coach. That's what he cares about. When it comes to addressing the team, he doesn't address them. He leaves that to other coaches. When it comes to his relationship with star players, well, first off, what star players? And then secondly, what relationship? He doesn't get along with any of his guys. He's not a leader. He's not motivational. He was brought in because he's an offensive guy who once upon a time with Denver had a great play calling season with Peyton Manning, who's only probably the second or third best quarterback of all time. It's just ridiculous. It is ridiculous, and the Jets this season are abysmal, and I feel so bad for Jets fans and anyone who has to watch that. And for Sam Darnold, my condolences to you, my brother. I really hope you make it out of the season alive. Anyways, coming up next, we're going to talk some Tampa Bay, some Tom Brady, Bruce Arians, some controversy that's been going on. I'm going to give you my thoughts on the team so far moving forward. That coming up next, final topic of the day. Thank you for tuning in.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. Last segment talked about Adam Gase and the Jets and how I feel like after Game 3, the Jets, they might want to really look at firing Adam Gase. I don't see the point in keeping Adam Gase. One of the biggest things when you have a head coach is you want to see growth in your team. You want to see growth in all of your players, but most importantly in the quarterback, especially if your head coach is supposed to be some offensive-leaning guy who can dial up really creative plays and can really make things more simple on your quarterback. Either you're telling me Adam Gase is probably, the worst play caller in the league, or one of the worst, or Sam Darnold is just that bad, or maybe it's all the talent on the team is just that bad, or maybe it's just everything altogether and the team just needs to be blown up. Nonetheless, I think the first step is getting rid of Adam Gase. I have not seen a single report that says anybody likes Adam Gase. According to insiders, the team, he doesn't inspire the team. He doesn't address the team. He's more about himself. He's not really a motivational kind of guy. And some coaches aren't. Some coaches are a bit more just, nose to the grindstone. Let's just get this done. Let's just work. Let's do our job. But it's terrible. The Jets have not been good. They have looked like a mess. And I just think it's about time for them to make a decision for the betterment of Sam Darnold. Let's get into this final topic, though. So another team I want to talk about, Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay coming off of a win against Carolina, as I expected them to. The score of the game, to me, was not really, what it should have been. I think Tampa Bay should have had at least 2 more scores. What was it? There were 2 drop touchdown passes, 2 or 3 drop touchdown passes that were beautiful. This game should have been a blowout. It still kind of was, 31-17. So still kind of a blowout, but not as big as it could have been. Tom Brady, he looked sharper than he did against the Saints. Again, like I said, when it came to that week 1 against the Saints, there weren't many teams that had a more difficult first game than Tampa Bay. You would say probably Cleveland. You would say maybe, maybe the Falcons, just because their defense had to face Russell Wilson to kick off the year. I don't know. I don't really know. I would say, if anything, probably Baker Mayfield against the Ravens was probably the bigger test. But nonetheless, after that game, Bruce Arians came out and he threw Tom Brady under the bus. He threw him under the bus and ran him over. And he talked about his 2 interceptions, and he said that both the interceptions were on him. The one that was going to Mike Evans, that was way over his head, that was on Brady. And then the pick 6 against with Janoris Jenkins, that was also on him. Bruce Arians then came out and said that upon further review, the first interception was actually on Mike Evans because Evans didn't complete his route. And Tom Brady expected him to be in a place where he just wasn't. I think Mike Evans kind of thought that Tom Brady could see where the safety was, and so he kind of sat into like a soft spot where he had an opening, and Tom Brady just wasn't on the same page there. And that's the thing when you talk about practice, right? Building chemistry, getting on the same page, something he and Julian Edelman had probably better than most quarterback receiver duos in the league, but he and Evans just weren't there. He continued to kind of throw it where Evans was supposed to be, wasn't there, but he did say that the second one was on Brady. He tried to force a ball, Janoris Jenkins read the play, and he took it to the house for a pick 6. But people after Bruce Arians said this, and including myself, when I read the quotes, I was kind of shocked, I was dumbfounded. A lot of people said Bruce Arians was out of line with his criticism of Brady, and they instantly related it back to New England. And they talked about, you've seen the articles, you've heard what Brady says, just read into some of his comments. He didn't have fun in New England. Giselle hated the way Bill Belichick treated him. She hated the fact that he would call out Brady like he was anybody else. He would just ring Brady in film sessions, talk about all of his mistakes, and Brady could take it. But after a while, there is only so long before you eventually you're just like, shut up. Can you just give me some credit? And that's something that Bill Belichick never really did, like he has been doing for guys like Cam Newton, right? When it comes to Cam Newton, he has been so vocal about how great he's been. And I'm sitting back here and I'm thinking to myself, I don't remember him ever saying any of this about Tom Brady. It was always just, he did his job. He did his job. On to the next team. He did what he was supposed to do. Yeah, no, he played great. And that was part of the reason as to why it is that Tom Brady left New England. It wasn't just that he saw the talent around him eroding, It wasn't just that he saw his window closing to win a championship on top of seeing the roster kind of eroding in terms of talent, but that he was sick and tired of Bill Belichick. He wanted to finally get away from him. He wanted to go to a new environment. He wanted to go where there were actually weapons, where there was a more fun coaching staff, a less rigid coaching staff, and where he'd be able to maximize his last few years or so to actually win a championship. Now, was Tampa Bay necessarily the place to do it? I don't know. They have the talent for him to, put up some numbers, but necessarily to win a championship, I don't know. What, Tampa Bay they won a Super Bowl back in the early 2000s, and even that Super Bowl team is barely talked about. Since then, they have been irrelevant. But Brady went there, turned it into Tampa Bay. He's trying to turn it around. Brett Favre came out, talked about what Bruce Arians said regarding Brady, said he thinks that Bruce Arians was too harsh and that he needs to be careful. I think here's the thing. Brady going into Tampa Bay, he knew what Bruce Arians was. I think anybody can tell what Bruce Arians is. Bruce Arians is a bit of a hard ass. He's a bit rougher on his quarterbacks. He's very stern in his criticism, and he probably is a bit more of a reactionary person. You've seen him on the sidelines. He gets really animated. You see him turning like blood red the more angry he gets. I think that he's a very, very emotional person, and he probably just kind of out the gate reacted to what he thought he saw. He then came out and obviously he said that, he made a mistake and that it was actually Mike Evans' fault. And Tom Brady said, we're all good. We had our conversation about it. At the end of the day, his job is to go there and win games. Obviously, they go against the Panthers, a team that, again, I don't think they're good. I thought the Panthers would be one of the 10 worst teams in the league. I don't like their talent. I think their defense is awful. I like McCaffrey. I do like DJ Moore. I like Teddy Bridgewater. I think they're good. Teddy Bridgewater, I like him more as a backup or as a game manager style quarterback, not necessarily as a franchise quarterback, but nonetheless, I think they're okay on offense. Defensively, they're terrible. So it wasn't much of a challenge, at least in my eyes, for Tampa Bay. I expected Tampa Bay to win the game. If they didn't, I would have been more concerned about Tampa Bay and what it says about their team. But when it comes to the relationship between Bruce Arians and Tom Brady, look, I don't think they're gonna be together for 5 years. It's a 2-year deal. Maybe Brady signs for one more year, or maybe he does just decide to retire. But nonetheless, I don't think this is gonna ruin the season. If we hear more about it later on, then okay, maybe. If Bruce Arians, if Brady makes another interception that's on the receiver and Arians comes out after the game and calls out Brady for it again, maybe we'll have an issue. But I think Arians has learned since that he needs to be a bit more careful. Tom Brady, he does know a bit more about what he's doing out there. He's not just just because he's gotten older doesn't mean his mental capability has left him. His arm strength has maybe waned a bit. His accuracy has maybe waned a bit, but he's still fine. He is still going to be fine. But my takeaway from the game is, this is kind of how I expected Tampa Bay to look. Numbers-wise, the way Brady's performing, this is kind of what I expected. I'm seeing all these reports. This is another thing I pushed back against repeatedly. I see all these reports and people are talking about how Tampa Bay is favored to be one of the top teams in the NFC, and they're favored to be one of the top offenses, and people are talking about how this is the most talent he's had since the 07 Patriots, and they're probably even more talented. He's got Mike Evans, and Chris Godwin, and Cameron Brate, and O.J. Howard, who still hasn't proved anything, but he has O.J. Howard, and oh my god, they got Rob Gronkowski back, and the offensive line is good when it comes to pass blocking, and you've got Ronald Jones, and all this stuff, and the defense is actually really, really good. Don't mind the record, Jameis Winston just put them in a lot of nightmare situations. I see all these reports, and I sat back and I'm just thinking to myself, I've never seen a team go into a season with a new quarterback, with no preseason, with limited practices, no scrimmages, no rookie training camp, none of it, and people just expect this team to just go, oh, well, it's Tom Brady. oh, well, it's Madden. It's like Madden. The overall is the overall, and you just plug in the player, and they're instantly going to play great. I just haven't seen that before. I haven't seen it. And I didn't understand it. People were giving Tom Brady so much credit because he's the GOAT, and because of his surroundings last year, and they held so much of it against Bill Belichick and more against the team than they did Tom Brady when it came to the performance and his numbers and everything, that people decided to give him the benefit of the doubt, and they just thought, you know what, it'll be able to work. Tom Brady's smart enough, they're going to understand, Bruce Arians is going to work with them, everything will be fine. I read the stat to you. Every single quarterback, whether it's Carson Palmer, or it's Andrew Luck, or it's Jameis Winston, it doesn't matter who. Every quarterback in their first year with Bruce Arians has led the league in turnover-worthy plays. Through 2 games, Tom Brady has 3 interceptions. I don't know if he's ever done that in his career. I'd have to probably look that up. I don't know. That's like next level stats. I don't know if he's ever done that before. But through 2 games, he has 3 interceptions. That's very Jameis Winston-esque, don't you think? I mean, it might actually be more. If it was Jameis Winston, it'd probably be like 4 or 5, maybe even 6. Who friggin' knows? But what I do know is that they probably would have scored more points. I mean, here's the thing, right? When you take Jameis Winston for all of his faults, for all of his turnovers, when it comes to just his flat-out performances, when it comes to his flat-out grading, he, over the last, 10, 12 games, played better than Tom Brady. He did. When you look at the grades, despite his turnovers, his yards per attempt, his yards per games, his touchdowns, his interceptions, his overall grading, he played better than Tom Brady. But they were so quick to get rid of him and plug in a new quarterback this year because they were so sick and tired of the turnovers that they thought, we have to be able to do better than this. We just need to cut down on the turnovers. And I'm not going to say that they're wrong, but I'm also going to say that 2020 was a terrible year to do it. I think they would have probably benefited keeping Jameis Winston, now with his eyes being fixed, rather than going to a new quarterback. But who knows? Maybe you had some players on the team talk about how they're just sick and tired of Jameis. They needed more of an adult in the room. The team wants to learn how to win. Who better to bring in than Tom Brady and to bring in his best friend Rob Gronkowski? But this is kind of how I expected Tampa Bay to look. I still think Tampa Bay is gonna be a good team. I don't think that they're gonna I don't think that they were going to be one of the 10 worst. I thought they'd be good. I mean, their next game's against the Broncos. That'll be a win. Their next game after that's going to be the Chargers. I think that'll be a win. Then it's the Bears. That'll probably be a win. Then it's the Packers. That might be a loss. Because Aaron Rodgers seems to be on one this year. And then, it's the Raiders. It's the Giants. Tampa Bay's going to be fine. They'll be good. They'll be in the playoffs. But I didn't think this was going to be one of Tom Brady's all-time best years. I didn't think that going into the season, he and Bruce Arians were just going to click like that and everything was going to be just, candy and roses and rainbows. I didn't think that. I thought he'd come into the season and that he would struggle in a more bombs-away style offense. I thought that he would be asked to do more this year than he probably has ever had to do before because Bill Belichick is the greatest coach in NFL history and always had a good game plan. His style, his method is we are going to attack what you do the worst and we're going to stop what you do the best and we're going to make you beat us with your left hand. And his teams, have you ever really seen a poorly coached Bill Belichick team? No. But we've seen poorly coached, we have seen Bruce Arians' teams not show up to play. We've seen it before. It's not like it has never happened. His offense is always fun. They are usually able to put up some points. But on defense, it doesn't always stop them from not giving up points. Their offense turns it over. It's just the way they play. It's a risk-it, no-biscuit style team. And I thought he'd be asked to do more this year than he probably has ever had to do before. Because they aren't going to just lean on the run game. They're going to lean on Brady to save them. Leonard Fournette had a big run against the Panthers. Woo. They spread the ball out a bit more. They won without Chris Godwin. Again, it was the Panthers. Call me when they face a real team. Oh, wait, no, that's right. They did face a real team week 1. And they got demolished. And Brady looked awful. And Breeze didn't even look good. He didn't even look good. And they still wiped him out. And of course, they would have wiped him out by even more if they just didn't take away that touchdown by Kamara at the end of the game. This is kind of how I thought Tampa Bay would look. I think they'll be a good team. I still think they'll probably be a wild card team, but I think the real test, if anything, will probably be heading into the next season when they have all this experience with each other and a full off season to work together. Then I think we can talk. Then that's when I'd say, and obviously we'll see how Brady looks, but then that's when I'd say we can really talk about what is the ceiling for this team. Because I think the ceiling for this team this year is wild card, and that's it. I really do. I think they'll get to the wild card round, and then they'll probably get beat. Because I think there's other teams that have more experience together, and that is ultimately what's going to overcome them. Is just the other team having more chemistry, understanding each other better, and that will be... And there's also the war of attrition, because, oh my god, the amount of injuries that happened Sunday is ridiculous. All across the league. Saquon Barkley's down, and then Drew Lock is down, and then Nick Bosa, just everywhere. It was insane. So, I mean, I guess we'll wait and we'll see. If at the end of the year, the top teams are just riddled with injuries, then maybe that's Tampa Bay's window. But as it stands right now, I think Tampa Bay is a wild card team, and then they will be bounced. But, if Bruce Arians and Brady, I never thought it was like a match made in heaven. I just thought he just wanted to get away from Bill Belichick. He just wanted to go somewhere else. Well, he's somewhere else. We'll see how the season goes. I think it'll be rocky. I think they'll be like 10-6. And that probably the second year will be better than the first. But who knows? I never thought this season was going to be like, oh, Tampa Bay to the Super Bowl, and that's just it. It's over for the rest of the league. I never thought that. And anyone who did, I think they were just they're fooling themselves, or they don't really know football. Anyways, thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us out. Also, if you can, please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you. And have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.